I've been listening to both of you guys, and actually, I've been enjoying it quite a lot. I was telling Carlos the other week, it's an interesting, enjoyable conversation. It's not like you're jumping into another meeting and you have to be so formal and professional about anything. It's real. So,
no one's going to accuse us of being formal and professional. That's for sure.
Right. That's good.
Hello and welcome to episode 28 of the Offsite podcast, where we chat all things construction and technology. My name's Carlos Caballo.
And I'm Jason Lancini. Carlos, how are you today?
Not too bad, thanks. Pushing through the old pain of recovery.
I see you're sporting a fashionable new swing.
Yeah, exactly. For anyone, for a bit of context, I managed to tear the socket off of my shoulder in a challenge of football. So they've drilled a bunch of holes into the bone and anchored the socket back in. So bit of a savage recovery, but I'll smile through it, that's for sure.
Do you want to explain what you were doing? Were you going for best bicycle kick, or what was it? Is it something you shouldn't be doing at your advanced age?
Now, I wish it was a bicycle kick. No, I went up for a simple header, and as I jumped, someone else sort of aggressively jumped through the back of my arm, which popped it out forward. So I put on a brave face and walked off, because most people think you're being dramatic in football if you roll around on the floor crying. So I just got on with it and then got an MRI to tell me that it actually wasn't okay, but that's all good.
Well, being a QS, you know exactly who to sue for that.
Yeah, exactly. Right, today we've got a guest on the show. He is one of the most sort of prominent voices within the GIS space. He's also head of GIS at a contractor we know very well, which is Skanska. I'm surprised he's got enough time to join us, considering how many panels he seems to be on at every event across the country each week. Welcome to the show, George. How are you?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Jason and Carlos. Thank you. I'm
morning,
great.
George.
What a nice introduction. Now I have to update my LinkedIn bio with this introduction, Carlos, and I will quote you underneath. But it's a pleasure to be here.
That's fine. You've got loads of followers. If you want a video of me as your LinkedIn bio, that's absolutely fine. I was doing, with every guest that comes on the show, I always double check their LinkedIn page to have a bit of a stalk. Obviously, we've known each other a little while, but I always have a check. I had no idea you're doing a PhD at the moment.
Yeah, it's an amazing journey, Carlos. Like I said, so I'm doing it part-time at University College London, and I've always found research quite exciting, and I know this can be quite a boring conversational topic, but for me, research is, about solving a puzzle, or a problem that you don't know the answer to the first place, which is very much like construction most of the times. So if you start exercising skills about problem solving and hopefully have some fun while you're doing it, I think it's an amazing and valuable skill set to have throughout your entire life. So that's one of my motivations behind my PhD. And of course, it's very closely linked to what I do on a day-to-day basis around GIS and building information modeling and asset management. So it's a topic that is really interesting to me, and my only suggestion is, if someone would like to do it, by all means, it's very rewarding. It can be challenging. Just make sure you do it because you're really passionate about the topic. Otherwise, it becomes really, really challenging.
Nice. Yeah, it's really impressive. And best of luck with it. Keen to see how that gets on.
No, thank you so much.
To kick off, keen to get, I guess, your sort of, it's quite a broad question, but what are GIS systems and why do contractors use them?
I really like this question, Carlos, and I'll start with my own view, which is very much around the need of separating data from technology, and we see this becoming harder and harder nowadays. So GIS definitely is interpreted as a GIS system, which can be a proprietary software or an open source software, but it's also founded on the management of geospatial or location data, as I'd like to call it. So I would like, firstly, to start with why is location data valuable for a construction business, right? And the answer to that is because everything that we are materially concerned with as a contractor business has a location reference. And a lot of the times, all the different, data streams and information that becomes part of a construction project is coming from different data sources, right? We can think where the program sits, where the risk register is, where the design information, construction data from on-site operations, and so on and so forth. As the ability to collect more and more data becomes cheaper and also much easier, there needs to be a way to make this data accessible, to maximize their value out of their collection, drive insights, analysis, and all this kind of good stuff we're talking about. So what location really does into the data is brings them together. I consider it to be like an integrator catalyst, if you'd like, which is able to pull all these different disparate data sources and bring them in a single place. And then what you're having on top of it, once your data is, let's say, location intelligent, then you can start utilizing GIS systems. Then you can start mapping, doing, mapping analysis and visualization analysis and geospatial analysis, and start producing advanced analytics and insights. But at the core of that is the quality of your location and geospatial data that the GIS system can process and add value to all stakeholders. So I'd say one of the most prominent uses of GIS is the ability to almost be data agnostic, including software agnostic, regardless of which type of GIS system you're having, simply because of the ability to incorporate thousands and thousands of drawings in a single page, start doing some clever things and presenting this information back to stakeholders, also in real time, which is very important for construction operations. So yeah, I'd say this is one of our biggest use cases and applications of GIS in construction.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense to, like, there's so much information and data in construction, to have that visual way to actually like digest and use it in a more meaningful way makes a ton of sense. Contractors have varied, let's say, just say use of GIS systems, right? We speak to a lot of contractors and there's a big sort of spectrum. Skanska are at the top end of that spectrum from what I've observed. There seems to be a big focus on GIS, and there is like quite a big team that are quite sort of apparent within the industry. Is Skanska's push because of like the business understands the value of these systems and are pushing it, or is it more like client driven by nature?
I think that as an industry in general, Carlos, we are all on the journey of this digital transformation, right? And being location data driven or GIS driven is part of this digital transformation journey. Different contractors, I suppose, may have what we call end clients, right? GIS, geospatial levels of maturity, which is an informal term that I like to use to understand where we are in context of the wider industry. So I'd say everyone is on this journey. Some companies might be more advanced. Some clients might be a bit more advanced or a little bit behind. As Skanska, I would say that we are always looking to push the boundaries. We are always looking to deliver better, faster, more sustainable nowadays products for our clients. We're always eager to work together with our clients to make sure that they are maximizing the value out of collected data. I have a strong biased view. I have to admit that in the future, our clients will be more interested about the data that represent the asset digitally rather than the physical asset itself, right? But this needs to start early on. If you start thinking about this when you're operating and maintaining your asset, it's already too late. So you need to start thinking about your O&M requirements from very, very early on. And, as Skanska, as a tier one contractor, that we're almost the conduit between what is being designed, what is being maintained. Essentially, we're building or our supply chain is building the asset, we become custodians of data that have a lot of value for our clients. So we need to be in a position where we give them the opportunity to use GIS, to use other digital solution systems together, integrated to operate and manage their assets better. So I'd say it's a bit of a mix, but we're always trying to do things better.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't feel like a system you can sort of introduce halfway through a scheme as a bit of a reaction to a requirement. It needs to be like implemented early and adopted in the right way. I guess one final question before I let Jason jump in. Is GIS something that Skanska sort of apply and use on their projects because it improves their offering and how they deliver projects? Or is it typically clients saying GIS is a requirement for this particular contract, and then you go from that point? Or are you making that decision as the contractor?
It's a bit of both. Nowadays, GIS is a requirement, is a client requirement, Carlos. But I have a question for us to discuss perhaps further down the line. But how well do you think construction projects would respond to digital requirements? So a lot of times, part of the digital transformation, and that's my view, is when you're trying to impose something, simply because it is a requirement, it's not going to go down well. Because digital transformation and technologies and GIS and systems and solutions, GIS is part of them, is in my view, meant to improve the day-to-day tasks or the project delivery of the workforce. So yes, it is a client requirement, and yes, there are compliance requirements and needs, and absolutely, this is great to see, because this means that the client recognizes the value and they will be able to do something with the data that we're handing over to them. But at the same time, what is really important for me and what we are looking to do as Skanska is to make sure that we are always, when we are using
George, first of all, mate, I want to just congratulate you and commend your dedication to do a PhD. Doing a PhD has like two parts to it in my view, with my brother and his partner and stuff doing them. But like, there's the problem solving side that you mentioned, which is like researching and studying and finding and solving a problem. Then there's the second half, which you have to like document it and communicate it to someone else. And I find that, like myself, I really love the problem solving piece, but I'm terrible. I don't have the patience to do the documenting side of it. I think it's a character flaw of myself. So for someone that actually does have the dedication and patience to do that, I commend.
Thank you, Jason.
Back to like a question around a construction and GIS. One of the things that I've noticed from interacting with lots and lots of projects is this sort of trend where certain projects are like a BIM project and certain projects are a GIS project, and some projects, the really big ones, are like a bit of both, and then some are not. And that could be within the same contractor. Usually it's to do with like size of project and how much, whether it's a hard dollar contract versus, like a fixed price contract versus an alliance. Do you see that across the business or there in the UK? And I guess what goes into making the decision about what's the sort of stack of tools that would suit a type of project?
No, it's a really good question, Jason. So the argument or the question BIM or GIS, it's something I faced very early on in my career. For the record, I'm very passionate about both BIM and GIS. I consider them fundamental information streams for the construction industry. But at the same time, my answer to the BIM or GIS has always been BIM and GIS. But before we jump into this, It's understanding and clarifying that these are two separate entities, domains, worlds, professions. They are both linked with a built environment, obviously, and the answer would like to be. The analogy I like to make is that maybe you should think of BIM like an island and GIS the world that encompasses this island in this. So from construction terminology, I guess, what BIM is capturing the micro detail of the particular asset in question, as opposed to GIS, which is capturing the geospatial context and all the interfaces and relationships of this asset with the rest of the world. That can be anything from environment, from supply chain and logistics, from temporary works engineering. There are lots of interfaces that need to be managed. So there are two different things, but at the end of the day, as you said, it also depends on a number of things. It depends on the initial scope of works, right? And what is the project that we are talking about? We see amplified value when we are talking about long linear infrastructure projects, where GIS plays a pivotal role in managing all these interfaces. If it is a particular asset, like if it's simply, I don't want to say simply, but it's the installation of a bridge somewhere, then maybe there might be limited geospatial requirements. It's likely that you will not need to do GIS. Maybe you can do the BIM processes and you will be okay with that. So it depends on the scope of works. It depends on the type of the project. Another sort of challenge or example we are seeing a lot nowadays is how GIS fits into vertical construction, because I'm talking a lot about long linear infrastructure projects where the value is given and continuously highlighted. But what about vertical construction? So I guess at the end of the day is to understand GIS or BIM, but for me it's like always GIS and BIM, is to be use case driven. So start from the end, what it is that you want to achieve. Like you have your scope of works, you have your key outcomes that you want to achieve, and then work backwards. Rather than trying to fit technologies and processes and domains into a problem, you need to let the problem highlight the right use of processes and technologies and data that you need to use to solve this, right? And
so does it become like an active decision as part of like the tendering of a project? Okay, so this project we're going to use and then does that even like come into the the overhead, the IT overhead for the project? Like, is it thought about right up front that this is going to be a BIM project or this is going to be a both project, or is that something you make an active decision on?
Typically it is, yes, because we are looking into the client requirements, Jason, and nowadays there are both BIM and GIS requirements. So almost naturally we're moving into a BIM and GIS space. And as part of what is called information exchange requirements. And then at the time of tender or work winning requirements, scope of works, opportunities, what are the use cases and solutions that we have internally on top of the client requirements, right? If we have a GIS solution to manage our health and safety risks better, then this is something we offer as a minimum, regardless, because we've documented the efficiencies and the benefits this will bring in the long term. So to answer this question, I think there is a really strong collaboration piece between the digital teams that needs to be present in every company. And I've heard your podcast, you continuously talk about collaboration between the construction and commercial team, right? I want to
all
stress,
like their role.
Yeah, I want to stress the importance of collaboration also between the digital teams, but also between the digital teams and the people and the teams that are delivering this project. And the BIM and GIS bit really one enhances the other. And we've seen this adopted actually by our project teams and commended that we are having an integrated approach rather than one way or the other, because fundamentally it's different. Even though they have the word information in it, fundamentally they are two different capabilities.
Yeah, so actually I might skip. I was going to ask something you said a couple of minutes ago triggered something that I was going to ask a question on, but what you just said, I really like to double click on, which is like another trend that I see interacting with lots of projects is a gap, or not a big gap, but like a big variance in how the construction team and the digital team interact from company to company and from project to project. I guess on some projects, I could describe it as, let's stick with GIS. If the construction team wanted something that was location based that existed in their GIS system, in some projects, the construction team are empowered. They have the tools. They go get it. It's done. They know how to do it. In others, like they email the GIS person and that person does it for them. And it's like, you've just basically, you almost, they become like a service provider that's on there that does all of the work. Which do you, I think I know what the answer is, but which do you see as the right way to think about integrating that into the business, and how do you sort of steer a team to be one way or the other?
Such a business. So this is something, Jason, that we're actually looking at nowadays, how we can improve the data literacy of our workforce, right? Make them and enable, empower them to manage their own data better, rather than, as you said, apologies. Accident.
You're getting animated. You're getting animated when you're knocking.
That's why I'm getting too excited about the topic. So rather than do it, through, okay, you need to speak to this GIS person. So I would say right now we are in the middle of this journey. We have the luck to collaborate with operations teams that have strong data skills. And this makes the entire process of collaborating and adopting digital capability easier and faster and more resilient in the long term. Because, the idea is to introduce, when you're introducing digital transformation tools, you're creating efficiencies, right? You don't want to add to the inefficiency and increase further your headcount that is going to drive down your profit. So we need to be really clever about how we are doing this. I'd say in these scenarios, our role, Jason, focuses on setting the framework, right? On setting the requirements and the, as I call it, the geospatial framework that our project teams will be working in. This means sort out data schemas and requirements, sort out processes, create or work together to create automation tools with these particular teams to make sure they can manage their own data effectively, and also make sure like we're collaborating with functions such as IT to be covered from cybersecurity, GDPR, and all these kind of things that are important nowadays. So there is this instance. And then the team is empowered. They are doing the tasks almost on their own, and we have a supervisory role. If you'd like, if something goes wrong, we are there to help. In situations where this is not the case, and some of the teams are still on the journey of learning how to manage their own data, we are stepping in and helping them to do that, but always with the mindset and long-term goal that you need to do this yourselves in the next 6 months, 1 year, and so on and so forth. And then you have the 100% dedicated GIS requirements. That is something that we are undertaking because these form parts of our delivery commitments to our clients. So it's something that we need to manage going forward. I said we are moving towards the digital empowerment, if you'd like, of our workforce.
But yeah, it's really striking to see, sometimes you'll meet with a team and they'll want something from a system like GIS, and within 10 seconds, they've opened it up and got it. And then on other projects, they go, oh, we'll ask person X, and we might be waiting 4 months for the thing. But you're right. Like what you said is like, if the way that a contractor is adopting technology is to sit someone in a desk that is the person that drives the technology, and they ask that person, they're by definition getting less efficient. Like, because it's just more overhead.
Absolutely.
You're totally right. One thing you said before, George, was that like you should think of BIM and GIS as like separate things in the island and the world analogy. Do you see it ever coming together?
Absolutely. I'm a keen advocate of that, and something that I've been looking at almost my entire professional and academic life, Jason. So I know it sounds a bit sad and definitely not interesting, but it can be quite fun, actually. I do see them. I do see the need of coming together. They are coming together. A lot of challenges to integrate the different domains and different worlds. They will come. I believe they will come together in a form that they will create a third information stream or domain, not in the form of GIS will embed BIM, will consume BIM, or BIM will consume GIS. So there will still be these key distinct information streams, but at the point in time, and for me that is the biggest question, when is the right time to integrate, right? Depending on where you are at the project life cycle, what you want to achieve in the end, because it can be quite an expensive process to integrate. They will form a third entity. I like to call it GeoBIM nowadays. It will be named something else probably when it's official, formal by far more important people than me.
No, it's probably some 19-year-old sat in their basement that will probably do it, and they'll probably take your GeoBIM and
yeah, and I will still be working. No credits, right? And we create a third entity that is meant to be an integrated version of geospatial and BIM. If you think about it, like what GeoBIM is supposed to be doing or is doing, is capturing the built environment holistically from every angle. Everything that we see nowadays, when we're on a project outside on site, can be described either through a geospatial information stream or through a building information modeling. Is it happening always? No. And there are lots of limitations and problem challenge to overcome, but this is where it can be. And on top of that, if you think about managing assets in scale, right, which a lot of our customers are focused on, it's really challenging to achieve this without drawing the benefits of both information domains.
To maybe push back on the third space idea, from an uneducated observer's perspective, what it looks like from a technology perspective is that that the bigger players in the GIS space are looking to try and consume some of the workflows and things that you would do in BIM, and then maybe a little bit of the other way from the BIM team. Like, I know BIM is a lot more than like just 3D on top of like GIS being 2D. There's a lot of functionality coming that kind of looks like the GIS is trying to eat the BIM. Would you say that's true, or that's just me reading into something that's not there?
It is true. You see a lot of effort from the software vendors to connect the two, and depending what origins its software vendor has, like are they coming from the BIM space or they're coming from GIS space, they present it as GIS is consuming BIM, or the other one's presenting as BIM is consuming GIS. So there's this bit fun of politics between software vendors remaining competitive and all this kind of good stuff. That is definitely the case. For me, what I would really like to, my view on this, and something that I've been very hopeful, I've been very lucky to have helped create in Skanska, is the collaboration between the teams. integration effort that solves a problem, rather than make an integration effort because it's competitive and we do be getting in the space and so on and so forth, because it will not be used, right, at the end of the day.
Carlos, I have one more question if I can sneak it in before you cut me off.
Yeah, go on then.
George, point clouds.
Yeah.
Are you using them? Where do you see them? Where do you see the use, and where do you see that going forward?
That's a really nice, really good question, Jason, because point clouds, in my view, is part of the geospatial sciences and the data that we're talking, the location data we're talking earlier, right? So it's important for people to understand that it's not just about the system. It's about all the different data capture techniques to provide to feed the system with information. So point clouds is something we're really interested in. I consider them a huge asset for construction projects, not just during design and construction, but also during asset management as well, with regular inspections. We've seen a lot of examples nowadays, but we are using them a lot within Skanska, and we're using point clouds. We're using outcomes of processed point clouds, such as 3D meshes or orthomosaics. And one of the biggest, for me, opportunities with point clouds is firstly how easy it is to collect data at scale, how easy and quick it is to collect data scale. And the second one is how you can start utilizing emerging technologies or emerged technologies nowadays, machine learning and all this kind of cool AI stuff, to start doing feature extraction and object extraction from point clouds, which in construction terms, this means better management and capture of productivity on site, for example, by monitoring volumes of earthworks and stockpiles, as an example, seeing line works and what has been accomplished within a particular day of works, compare it with your the information you're getting from your site diaries, and have better control over your productivity. Definitely a lot of this space. Then we also see point clouds and reality capture, and that in particular creating very photorealistic and impressive 3D visualization tools that when you share these with the project teams, it is likely that they will lead to identification of issues, health and safety issues or hazards that may have not been picked up earlier or might be harder to view in a 2D model or in a 3D model, whatever this might be. And essentially consider, what they say is like, I don't mean to undersell it by any chance, but what they say, one picture equals 1,000 words. Sometimes think about having an up-to-date 3D photorealistic view of your site. How a powerful conversation enabler can it be with different stakeholders? BIM was founded on the idea of collaboration. So we need to start promoting this collaboration more and more with digital tools. And on the side, what you have been doing actually as well as a company with the integration of geospatial functionality on your systems, we actually see examples from our projects where this is driving much better collaboration between a number of teams, simply because it makes the data so much more easily accessible, demystifies what is geospatial and where we're doing something. It's a huge asset.
Awesome.
I could easily go on for another half an hour, George, but we are going to have to cut off there.
Likewise. Obviously.
Thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule and chatting with us today. That was really interesting. Thank you very much.
Oh, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. Very nice to see you guys, and thank you for the invite.